Hi, I'm Eugene Marshall, co-owner of Arcanist Press and lead writer for Sigil Entertainment. I'm also the showrunner and GM for Sigil Spotlight, our streaming game channel. Sigil Spotlight is a Twitch streaming channel with 3 shows a week currently, and on each one, a diverse group of tabletop industry creators play each other's creations, their publications, their games, and we spotlight each other's work. It's a community of mutual support and fun, and it's a lot of fun. Definitely go back and check out some of our dozen or so episodes that have already aired. Now, we like to keep it fun and make sure that everyone is having a good time, so we use something called safety tools at our table. And in this video, I'll explain briefly what they are, why we use them, and how I've implemented them specifically on Roll20. So, first, what are safety tools? Well, in role-playing games, we players and GMs can wrestle with some pretty intense stuff, right? I mean, I've been in more than one game with heavy content like the death of innocents or sexual violence or torture or racism and more. Now, when we're dealing with that kind of stuff, we want to do so in a way that makes sure everyone's having fun at the table, because at the root, the point of coming together to play games is to enjoy ourselves, to have fun. And if we are doing something, or if someone's doing something that's preventing others from having fun, something's wrong, and we want to work to prevent that. And safety tools are, at root, tools for communication that just make sure everyone can have fun and keep having fun at the table. They're employed before, during, and after a game session. They basically establish agreed upon tone and content, facilitate kind of ongoing communication among players and the GM during the game, and provide some guidance for after the session, so that maybe future sessions can continue to or be even more fun. So I'll talk briefly about each of those stages, and then I'll talk about how we've implemented the in-game tools on Roll20. All right. So before we start playing, we have a session 0. Now, if you don't do this, I highly recommend it, regardless of the content and people involved. Right? A session 0 is when you, and probably you already have one of these informally, if you don't call it that. That's when you, for one thing, you might discuss with each other, okay, who's going to GM, who's going to be the DM or GM or the storyteller or whatever. What game are we going to play? Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, Powered by the Apocalypse. Okay, what genre would we like to play? What setting? What feel? Do we want it to be epic high fantasy like Tolkien? Do we want it to be Game of Thrones low fantasy? Do we want it to be, something grim and grueling like Torchbearer or Warhammer Fantasy or something else? Do we want to go in a totally different direction? You have that conversation. Because after all, you can't really have the game successfully if you just show up expecting to play some D&D and discover that you're not playing D&D, you're playing some other game that you don't like. That's no fun. So the first thing you do in session 0 is you establish the criteria, the rules of the game, what you're playing, and maybe what kind of broad genre. Is this going to be a sci-fi? Is this going to be a horror? It's just like when you go to the movies, right? It's polite to ask your friends before you buy the tickets, hey, is everyone up for a horror movie? Does everyone want to watch an action film? Same thing. If somebody's organizing, a player or a GM, it really behooves them to check in with everyone before they set it all up. Well, communication is important so that everyone can have fun at the movies or at your game. It's one version of the safety tools. One of the safety tools you can use basically just expands on that idea. So what we do is at our tables is we employ some safety tools that do that. Now, I've learned about safety tools from a variety of sources, but the best source is this. I'm now showing it on the screen. This is the Tabletop Role-Playing Game Safety Toolkit. It's created by Bryant-Monk and Kienna. They're both on Twitter. Go find them. They're awesome. I'm also at my table in part inspired by this, but also following them on Twitter. I'm also using Brie, Beau, Sheldon's script change. We'll talk about that. And John Stavropoulos' X card is also kind of involved here and needs to be named. Since I'm citing the great sources I've used, Monte Games' Consent in Gaming is also top flight, so definitely check those out. And there are actually links to all of those things, I believe, in the notes below this Twitch stream and on the YouTube video that will appear later. So this is a quick reference kit. It's available via a link below. It tells you what safety tools are, where and when to use them, and how they work. It gives you a menu, and then there's some links to further info, where to get them, etc. This is free. Brie, Beau, Sheldon's is pay what you want, I believe, but go ahead and pay them some cash. and so on and so forth. So that's where I'm learning those. So that deserves reference. But let me just summarize how we use them in our games on the stream and before the stream. First, I circulated as the GM and organizer and showrunner a consent checklist that was taken from Monte Cook Games' Consent in Gaming. And it lists several categories of topic that might come up in the game. And then there's little checkboxes. You can kind of, yes, I'd like that, or I want to encourage that sort of content. I'm caution, I'm kind of uncertain, or I have some concerns about that. It needs to be what's called veiled. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then no, hard no. This is a line I'm drawing here. None of this sort of content, please. So the sheet comes with a bunch of kind of commonly discussed content that might be problematic for some people. So that can include sexual violence, the death of children, or harm against children, harm against innocent animals. It can include certain sorts of torture or racism. You know, maybe some people, they just don't enjoy those things in their leisure. Just like some people don't like to go to horror movies because they don't like the gore, and other people don't like to go to movies where awful people do awful things to innocent children. I mean, I don't particularly enjoy films like that, even the best sorts. Maybe people don't enjoy that sort of content in their media, and so they don't enjoy it in their games. As somebody who, if you ostensibly want everyone to have a good time together at the table, just the decent human thing to do is to care that if you want to torture the NPC in your game, or if you as a GM want to motivate your players, so you're going to really make them hate the bad guy, so you're going to throw in a bunch of horrible violence that this bad guy's committed against, say, children, or sexual violence. If you know that that's really going to turn some people off and they're not going to be able to have fun, then the obvious human decent thing to do is not to do that content. Because the GM and everyone, hopefully at the table, wants to have fun, the consent checklist lets people indicate to everybody else, hey, these are my things. And to be honest, just a few years ago, I didn't know about these safety tools, and I didn't think I had any real lines. I mean, obviously, I was never one of those players that was interested in, torture or whatever. I've been in Dungeons and Dragons parties where there's always somebody that wants to torture every fight. They want to knock somebody out and not kill them, and then torture the information out of them. And I never found that enjoyable. But it doesn't ruin my fun unless it goes on for endless amounts of time. But then I was in a game a few years ago, and we'd been playing for 6 or 8 months, and the GM kind of set up a situation where we were trying to free some slaves, a community of slaves, families of slaves. And we did so, but they had been sufficiently brainwashed that they blew themselves and all of their innocent children up. And so we facilitated and were indirectly the cause of the death of like 100 children. And I got really angry, actually, at the GM and told them that was BS and that I really ruined it. And that was such a not cool way to we were trying to be heroic, and we were trying to save lives and make a difference in this kind of grim environment we'd found ourselves in. And we felt like we were being punished for caring. And, the other players agreed with me, and the game fell apart. Had we had that consent checklist, the GM would have known what they were getting themselves into by introducing that sort of content. Because I would have listed that as a line. Now, so one of the tools you can use at the beginning is kind of a general discussion of tone and a consent checklist. You might also talk about a rating. You might think of your game as rated G, or rated PG, or rated PG-13, or rated R. I'm using the American film rules. But that's called the script change rating. I've got that here, right? But you can also talk about what are called lines and veils. And with lines and veils, what you do, and those are around here somewhere as well, right above it, you list the things that are absolute no-goes. Those are the lines. And then the veils are things you want to cut to black on and have maybe happen off screen or off stage. So maybe there's some sex going on. You don't actually want to role play it. You just, okay, it has happened. And then the next day, right, the scene cuts. And they go into the bedroom, the door closes, and that's all you see. If that's where you'd rather be on torture or certain sorts of violence or sexual, explicit sex, that's a veil for you. Totally legit. So a good session 0 includes those discussions, and ours did. We did the consent checklist. We did the lines and veils talk. We talked about tone and the kind of rating. So that was the first thing we did. Safety tools beforehand. We also talked more generally about
open door policies, and that we have an open an open table. So that means if somebody is bothered by something, or for whatever reason has to go to the bathroom, they can feel free to get up and just walk away. No explanation needed. Because life happens. If you've got we all have our children home right now thanks to stay-at-home orders, and so maybe there's a child has fallen down and needs a parent. So you just get up and walk away. You don't have to wait for the break, right? We're humans. It happens. So just being open and clear about all of that is a way to create an environment where people feel like they can enjoy themselves, right? So that's the first step. During play, however, we use a separate set of tools because sometimes you don't know what's going to bother you, right? I didn't know beforehand that event was going to occur, and I didn't even know how viscerally it would affect me. I have children of my own, and it really hit me like a gut punch. It was really unpleasant. I was shocked because I didn't think I had that as a trigger of mine, but apparently I do, because it really messed me up for a couple days. It was bad. I hated it. So we didn't have any safety tools in play at the table, but you can use them. And the most traditional one is what's called the X card. And what that is a card in face-to-face play on the table with the X on it, and you just tap it when there's some content you're uncomfortable with. I actually prefer script change because it gives you more flexibility than that. But I'm incorporating what are called the X and O cards into the script change. So N and O are when basically, let me just show you what I do with the script change. So down at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see all of my Roll20 games. So here's a D&D game, here is a Cipher System game, and here is an independent game we played from Linda Kodega recently called Star Drawn, a tarot-based game. But all of these I have these little buttons at the bottom that look like they're from a media player. Stop, rewind, pause, fast forward. Then there's also OK, question mark, OK, exclamation point, that sort of thing. So here's how they work. Let's say you're playing a game and you have some content that you're not comfortable with. So you didn't realize it was going to bother you that this person, it never occurred to you to tell your GM, hey, I really have a thing about like dental events. I really hate like graphic descriptions of dental work, or eye trauma, or like suffocation like freaks me out. So please don't describe my character suffocating or drowning or whatever. Certain things bother people. They don't want it, ruins their fun. Let's say one of those comes up and you didn't know it was going to bother you, or forgot, you didn't notify anybody about it. Having these in play lets you be like, okay, hold on, stop. So you hit the stop button. You'll see on the right what popped up. It says stop. And then there's a little description. Please move away from this scene. The player stopping is welcome to share at the end of the session why they stopped if they would like. We will not otherwise revisit it. So what that's saying is somebody said stop. The GM's job, or whoever has narrative control at that moment, they see that and are like, okay, well, let's move to something else. We'll move on, or we'll go in another direction. That's basically the equivalent of the X card. I like script change tools for this reason, because you also have the option to hit rewind. Let's say you don't want to just shut everything down. It's kind of a lot of burden. You feel like, gosh, do I really want to shut this down? It's really bothering me. But if you can just hit rewind and do a little retcon, like, can we just say that the guy died beforehand and you don't get to torture him? Or can we just say that my character left the room before the dental torture happened? Or can we just say that sort of thing? So that's a useful tool. Just kind of alter course. Maybe you don't need to retcon anything. You just want to ask a clarifying question. We've got a pause button, right? It can also be like, can I take a break? I need a drink, or whatever. But it can also be about the content. Like, I have a concern I wanted to raise. This is bothering me, or whatever. I'm not sure if this is where you're going with this. If not, let's say there's something that's bothering you, but you'll probably be okay, but you want to take it slow. Just like, let's go step by step. You hit the frame by frame button, or the pause button, right? And it says slow there, right? And so this is like, maybe you're like getting, edging towards the topic that you think will really bother you. You hit this button, let everybody know to take it carefully. And then you do. Maybe there's content that is, you're worried that you're not bothered by, but you're worried somebody else is, right? Like, it's an intense scene. So you hit the okay question mark button. Is everyone okay with the content? That allows, you can just tap that while you're playing. Like, a DM or GM can be describing something graphic occurring. and they see people biting their nails, or maybe it's really intense and emotional. It's the end of a big campaign or something, and people are actually crying. I've been in games where players are tearing up because of something happening in the narrative, right? Because they care so much about their characters or these NPCs or this world. And so you, the GM or a fellow player, can't tell, like, is this person actually upset? Like, am I being a jerk? Or is this just them being really wrapped up in it? Like, when you see somebody crying watching TV, you're like, are you upset? Or is this just, you're just invested in the fiction? So you ask the OK button. And then people can respond with OK, play or continue. Or they can hit pause or stop. Or maybe you can anticipate, like you're crying and you see the people look concerned. You can just let them know, it's okay. We should keep doing this. I might not appear comfortable, but I'm okay. So those are the safety tools that we use at the table. We also do things like take frequent breaks. We have frequent check-ins and see how people are doing. Combined with the consent checklist and the pre-game kind of lines and veils, I've found that we never have any trouble with content, but I'm going to keep using them just in case. Now, you'll notice, let me point out, so that's how we use the safety tools in the game. I'll just mention that after the game, we do one or two more things, and then I'll show you how I actually set these up on Roll20. So after the game, we do something called Stars and Wishes, where each player has a chance to kind of identify something they'd like to highlight as a star of the show. It can be a person, it can be an action, it can be a choice, it can be the system, the way the GM described things, whatever. And then a wish is something they hope could happen in future sessions. It can be positive, like, I want more of this. It can be kind of critical, like, I wish we didn't do this thing again because I didn't like that, or whatever. And then we have kind of a more general debrief where we check in with people, see how they're feeling and doing about what happened. And I would recommend those for anybody in any game, even if you don't think you have to worry about content, which I think you're wrong about that. You should still use safety tools. But let's say you don't think you need them. Still have a debrief after the game. It's so useful as a GM or a player to learn what people liked that you did, right? Like, oh, when you did that cool description, that was awesome. Or that was so much fun when you made that joke. Or I love the way you do your character voice, or whatever. Like, that's really rewarding to hear other people tell you what they liked about what you did. And it really keeps the motor running for the next session, right? You're like, oh, that was great, right? So and knowing it also as a GM, for example, knowing, oh, this is what the players loved and not this is what they didn't love, either because they wish it didn't happen or because they just don't mention it as one of the stars. That's very helpful information for running a good game, right? What do you know? This is all just communication. Talking in advance about what we want and don't want, talking during the session about what's working for us and what isn't, and then talking after about the same things. Open communication makes these safety tools work better. Now, they don't prevent emotional turmoil and problems from coming out. They're only there like a safety net to help, or a helmet. You might still crash, but it'll hopefully take the edge off, right? So those are the safety tools we use. And those are, again, from this great document by Kienna Shaw and Lauren Bryant-Monk, and the script change tools specifically are from Brie, Beau, Sheldon. So those are the tools we're using, and Monte Cook Games is Consent and Gaming, again, I want to call out as well as being awesome. But let me tell you how I did these now. This is a D&D game. So when you create a game on Roll20, you choose the character sheet, and that kind of sets up how everything's going to look and function. I've got 3 up here. So the D&D game here, you'll notice if you know your D&D, this is actually using the style of D&D. It's got that red bar right up here and the red all caps kind of letters across that. That's the style taken, guess what, from the D&D sheets. So, that's what the D&D sheets look like. Although in Roll20, they don't look quite like that. They're more gray, but they've got that red there. So this is the style taken from the sheet. And that's because what I've done is set up macros buttons at the bottom. Those are what those are called. And you make those by the following. You go to the collections button up here, which is the top right corner next to the gear. Right? See that little bouncing box in the top right corner? That's the collections button. And you see I've got all these tools here. They are called macros. So what you do is you go to add, and then you give it a name. Actually, why don't I use the one I've already created? Safety Tool 1. I did this as a demo. And you just type in words that will appear when this button gets pressed. So like testing, right? And there's even a button, if you go back to the chat, you can hit the test macro button, and there it says down here, testing, down here in the corner, right? All right. So if you want it to be fancier, you can make it say all kinds of things. All right, there it is. Spit in there. And if you throw that in the bottom, you go back to your collections button up here. Okay, that's the safety tool. It's in the bar, right? Down here, safety tool 1. Watch what happens. There it is again, and again, and again. So now I'm clicking this button, down here in the corner, at the bottom that says safety tool number 1, and it's popping it in the chat. That's popping garbage into the chat isn't helpful. So, but what I've done here is I've put something a little fancier. So I put this is the little fast forward button. I think it's in the, you can get it. I got it from like a character search. I just copy pasted it from another page right into there. And so then I've got this language: when you fast forward, you fade to black and advance time as needed to avoid content or elements of play, or just move forward in time. So that's what it does when you test it or when you hit the button. But you'll notice it's got this, the fast forward button and the kind of the style up on top. And you get that from this stuff here. That it says that's the template NPC action and the name of the action. What that means is it is drawing from the style of the sheets. Now, specifically what that means is whatever character is selected down here, right, in the as drop box. You see that little blue box at the bottom right corner next to the word send? Yep, that is the as button. So I can choose to post as, for example, an air elemental. And there's a big drop-down menu that you can't see here, but it is quite large. Here's the swarm of bats. I've jumped onto the S's. But you know what else I decided? I created a character sheet called Safety Tools. And you create a character sheet, of course, by going to the journal, hitting add, and choosing the character option up there. I'm not going to do that right now. You should know how to do that by now. But I just created a blank one. In fact, where is my Safety Tools character? Here it is. Safety Tools. This is important. It has to be controlled by all players. Okay? It's in everybody's journal, and it needs to be controlled by all players. That way, anybody else can use it to post. And here's why this matters. Because if I am down here as the rust monster, let's say, and I test the macro, look who it says tested it. It says that the rust monster has asked us to fast forward. Maybe the rust monster doesn't like that we're about to defeat it, and it wants to fast forward that scene. So it's fast forwarding the rust monster. Okay, well, what would normally happen is a character would log in and playing their character, and then they might be uncomfortable with something. And so they hit the fast forward button, and then their character name pops up there. So if the character of Nim is uncomfortable with a scene, or the player is uncomfortable with a scene, the player can hit the fast forward button. Any of these will work, right? And it'll show up as Nim's action. But what about if the player is uncomfortable with the idea that they are going to be the one to fast forward, or to skip, or to ask if everything's okay, or whatever? On Roll20, you can do something you cannot do very easily in person, safety tools wise. If you're sitting in person around a table, and there's that X card on the table, you have to reach out, and everyone can see you doing it, and tap it. And then everyone knows you're the one who wants to stop what's going on. And maybe they're enjoying themselves, and you feel guilty about that, or you feel that's a barrier for you to do it. By creating a blank character sheet that everyone can use, called Safety Tools, and telling your players, hey, go to that as box and choose Safety Tools, and then you can hit your Safety Tool button, it'll just post it as Safety Tools, and nobody, not the GM, not the players, knows who it was that actually hit that. So that gives you an anonymous way to just say, I'm uncomfortable with this. And as long as everyone else in your table is operating on the basic decency assumption that we all want to have fun together when we sit down to play a game, if that pops up, even anonymously, everyone should be like, all right, well, this is bugging somebody. And maybe you don't know who it is. Doesn't matter. The point is that the people who are uncomfortable are able to express that in a way that's kind of maximizes their comfort or their safety feelings when they do it. So I'm quite happy to have figured out that you can use safety tools like the script change and the X card in Roll20 and do it in a way that actually protects the players even more. And, since I'm streaming online, right, I like the fact that players can indicate that they have a safety concern and do it in a way that nobody, not the audience, not me, not the other players, know who it is that's expressing it. That really protects them from anybody in the audience getting upset if somebody wants to pause or stop or fast forward, right? So that's useful, I think. So by doing that, and I will post the texts of these macros if anybody wants to just copy paste them themselves. This is just drawing, again, from the character sheet, that is whoever is selected as the post as. And I do something similar with a Cipher System. So I run some Cipher System games, Numenera and so on. And I here, again, same safety tools, but this is drawing from the Cipher System sheet. So it has the Cipher System tools. So this says, you can see Eugene Marshall is using the stop safety tool, right? That's me, Eugene Marshall, or the GM. But I've created a safety tools character here too. So it just says safety tools now over here on the right, above that fast forward button, right? Again, just safety tools. That person's not identified. And this is similar to what I did before. It's a little bit more complicated because this is actually invoking. It's also because I'm not a master at macro writing. I think I could make this simpler, but this also just builds in a link to the character sheet, which is what this thing is that's becoming red periodically down here on the right. You know, I can click on that and open the safety tools character sheet. So I don't need that, but it's there, and I don't want to mess up my macro by messing around with it. It works. It's fine. I'll leave it alone. But it works, exactly. It gives the people the safety that they might want to be able to say, hey, this isn't cool, or hey, it is cool. You know, okay, let's go forward. And then finally, I created one that doesn't, for games that don't have any style sheet at all. So the characters here don't actually have character sheets. And this is an independently developed game by Linda, and their work here is awesome. Go check out that episode, but doesn't have a style character sheet. So when this person, if you're here, it just spits the text in. Please move away from this scene, right? Rewind. And so this, again, you can just post it as safety tools. A player has indicated they would like to keep exploring the scene, or, right, please move away from this scene. The player stopping is welcome to share at the end of the session why if they want, right? This is, again, anonymous over here, right? So as you can see where I'm pinging to the right there, it just says safety tools has asked this. It doesn't say who that person is. Okay, so to sum up, we use safety tools in Sigil Entertainment, Sigil Spotlight. We use three sorts. We use beforehand, we have a session 0 where we talk about kind of like what genre and game and system we're going to play, but also like what kind of tone and content we're going for, like what rating we talk about. And then we talk about lines and veils. Is there anything we really don't want in the game? Is there stuff that we're okay with as long as it happens off stage? During the game, we use the script change tools, which are just there. I mean, I will admit, in the 13 sessions I've run of Sigil Entertainment, Sigil Spotlight, hosted by Sigil Entertainment, and myself, no one's ever used any of the safety tools. So that doesn't mean I'm not going to keep leaving them there. I do, and I will, just in case somebody does. That tarot game in particular of Linda's, there could have been moments when we went into kind of really emotionally intense content. It was about the aftermath of a war, right? So I could imagine playing that game with someone who served in the military, maybe in a war zone, and topics of, fellow soldiers dying or IEDs or something coming up could cause somebody to be like, whoa, this is bothering me. I'm having memories of trauma I don't want to deal with right now. I'm trying to play a game. Can we skip that part? If that didn't come up in the lines and veils beforehand, those safety tools are there. So I think that's pretty crucial. And then afterwards, we do a debrief. We do stars and wishes and talk more generally about how it went and what we want next. So those are the safety tools we use on Sigil Spotlight, and this is how I use them in Roll20, these macros. I'll post links to some text below when I post this on the YouTube video. But until then, if this has been helpful to you, I'm delighted to hear it. Feel free to let us know. We're on Twitter at Arcanist Press and Sigil_EN. We are on YouTube, Sigil Entertainment, and here we are on Twitch as well. So thank you once again to Lauren Bryant-Monk, Kienna Shaw, Brie, Beau, Sheldon, John Stavropoulos, and Monte Games for providing tools that we use or are inspired by. And thanks to Sigil Entertainment for sponsoring the stream. And thank you to Roll20 for providing this wonderful tabletop, virtual tabletop that allows us to use these safety tools in novel ways. All right, I hope everybody found that useful, and have a good week.